Welcome back to another episode of the Blueprint Finance podcast, where we give everyday Kiwis the good oil on how to better manage their personal finances, retirement, things like the 4% rule, and different tiers of retirement.
Because the big question is, look, I want to invest in property, or I want to own a home, or I want to protect my finances, but to what end? So it's super important part of goal setting. What's actually realistic around retirement? We're going to crunch a bunch of numbers in this episode, and I'm going to base it off the information sort of we've been prescribed by the New Zealand government. So sorta.co.nz is a government agency on behalf of Superannuation New Zealand. They've got all the numbers and essentially what they're advising for retirement income, or what you should aim for to have as an income retirement. So this is if you retired today. Obviously, every year you can expect about 2.5% in inflation. So these numbers would go up by 2.5%. But we're just going to base this off today's numbers. It's interesting because a lot of people might hear these numbers and say, that's not that much, or that's a lot, All after tax. These numbers that we'll be talking about is after tax, so it's usable net income. And they've given us a really nice framework. So they've given us 3 tiers, like you said, of different retirement lifestyles that you can afford based on your income or what income you're going to have. So the first one they refer to as a bare bones retirement, right? So it's a $50,000 per year. For context, we're going to be looking at a married couple or just a couple partnership, right? We'll look at these 3 numbers. So we start off with the bare bones, which is $50,000 a year. So this is assuming you're getting $50,000 a year, you're going to have quite a bare bones retirement. So caveat as well, this is not including your living costs, which we'll come to a bit later. So it's just talking about funding your lifestyle, like your groceries, running a car maybe, and then occasional entertainment.
And the assumption is mortgage-free.
Or you've got supplemented household income. Maybe you're living with family or something like that, right? $50,000, it's suggested that it's not going to be a very luxurious life. You're not taking cruises to the Caribbean. You're not sort of getting first row tickets to the Robbie Williams concert. You're limited in what you're doing.
Super's going to cover $44,400 of that. So we're only needing to top up $5,600 per annum.
And for the bare bones retirement, based on what Sorted is recommending, you'd only have to top up $6,000. But we need to take this with a grain of salt, right? And how can we actually know if 50K is going to do the job? The only real way to understand that is to, put things into practice, right? Think about your own situation. Think about the life you want to live when you retire, and think about if you'll be okay with that. I mean, to be honest, 50K in my mind, it sounds like a bit of a rice and beans situation. It sounds like, you have to think twice before seeing the new Spider-Man movie. Another great point is where you choose to retire, which we'll come into as well a bit later on. So that's looking at the first recommendation, which is the bare bones. Now, we're going to bump up. Okay, so now you're putting the rice and beans away. You're now considering, the gold card movie tickets and maybe a couple presents for the grandkids, and Christmas and birthdays. We're moving to modest and comfortable. And for modest and comfortable, we're bumping up by $25,000 to $75,000 a year net income. Okay, so now we've got a bit more freedom and choice, right? We can maybe run a vehicle, still probably a bit of a shitter, but, like all of us, we can make do. Occasional overseas holiday, maybe. That's probably a Rarotonga, Australia holiday, and helping out with the grandkids. Now, the gap between NZ Super and that is $30,000, just over $30,000.
I didn't realize in bare bones we weren't running a vehicle.
This is the reality of a lot of Kiwis. We're going to bump it up now to what's called the choices. Right. So now the choices, they've put a band for choices, which is between 90,000 to 100,000, but we're just going to call it 100,000 because some of the things they've put in here to have a choices lifestyle, I'm going to say you need $100,000 net income a year to do this. All right. So now we're talking regular travel, regular. Yeah. So once a year, you guys are going on a holiday. Maybe once every 4 years, we're actually doing that cruise, that Pacific cruise,
Nice.
We've got hobbies. We've got the pickleball membership. That's pumping. you know? Now we're maybe driving a slightly nicer vehicle, more comfortable, maybe an SUV, you know, and we're less worried about sudden expenses. So, I mean, a lot of New Zealand households, most New Zealand households are running on less than 100 grand net income a year, you know? So definitely for someone who is not raising kids, it's a very, very good income.
That's a massive income in retirement.
So that's going to be labeled the choices. Anything above 100K in today's money net income would be considered a choices retirement based on the retirement agency. And the gap for that is 55,600. All right. So that's a pretty solid gap. We've added another 25K on the gap, which now is getting pretty significant, right? Thinking about filling that gap with either investments, rental income, or just saved cash. And I mean, something that we consider as, you know, retirements are a long time, but for most Kiwis these days, the first 15 years of that, you're pretty darn active, you know?
Yeah.
You're still probably running a pretty similar life to when you were in your last 15 years. From 50 to 65, you're in the car, you're fully functioning and a contributing member of society, right?
That's right. I mean, there's only so many nights a week to go to the bridge club and knit slippers.
Yeah. Also, just a disclaimer, we're not taking the piss out of retirees. We can't wait to do this stuff. It's really important to have an idea of what's needed to be comfortable.
Yeah.
And look, these numbers are big. The choices number's big, but it's not impossible.
No. And we're actually going to talk about how we get there.
What's happening with rent or mortgage or living expense. So something that's mentioned in these retirement forecasts is that if you haven't got to a position where you've got a paid off house, or you haven't got to a position where you can live rent free with family or something, we're going to add something that's called the renter tax or the mortgage tax on top of this requirement, right? So just as a standard, we're putting a $20,000 net renter tax on these goals if you're in regional New Zealand, so outside a major city, right? So say you're living in Gisborne, you know, Whangarei, Wanganui, population less than 50,000, where housing's more affordable and other related cost of living is slightly cheaper as well. Then we're going to put a $20,000. If you're living in Auckland, it's a $30,000 renter's tax.
Jeepers.
Assuming you're renting a whole unit to yourself, right? It's not cheap to be a part of this booming metropolis here.
Well, I mean, why would you be here if you're retired?
Well,
get out there in the regions.
That's the thing, right? So many people leave and retire to different areas.
Can we go north and get some cheap prices?
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
Way north of Whangarei, north of the Bay of Island.
You can sell up and either just be cashed up and rent cheaper, or you can buy a very cheap property up there and
Free up
extra
the cash.
money we're going to fill the gap with, right?
Beautiful.
So keep that in mind. We would add that. So, for example, if you wanted a choices lifestyle and you lived in Auckland, your goal would be 130K, not just 100K, right? So making a plan to be mortgage-free or neutralize your living cost is one of the best things you can do for your financial future.
I mean, if you end up in that situation where it's looking like things are going to be tight, to live that bare bones retirement, mortgage-free, topping up $5,600 seems quite achievable. If you don't own your own home freehold, then you've got to add another 20K to that.
Substantial.
It's huge.
Yeah, it's massive. Sweet. Now, let's talk about these two options, right? So you've sort of got two options to bridge this gap. We're just going to look at an option of use the 75K lifestyle as our option. And now let's look at the two options. So there's one option that's save and spend, right? We're going to save the difference. And then once we retire, we're going to spend it. Now, this one is a really basic, easy to figure out calculation, but there are some risks to it, right? So the major risk being, what if there are some large unexpected bills? You have to spend a lot more of that, sort of nest egg. And the second one being, how long are you going to live, right? Because if retirement age is 65, modern medicine is getting incredible. We're literally watching the average lifespan increasing year on year. Can you realistically budget for, 25 years, or do you need to do 30 years or 35 years? And then the second one is never run out. So this is alluding to something that you and I love to talk about, which is the 4% rule, this idea of living off an investment portfolio. This concept is that on $1 million of debt-free cash, you can safely withdraw 4% of that every year. Now, this has been tested in every single investment market, that even if you retired in the worst possible markets, the 1928 crash, you would still not run out of money and be able to withdraw 4% of that portfolio every year.
So if we're talking into that 75K modest goal where we're topping up super by 30,600, 4% on $1 million, 40,000, you're comfortably never running out.
So for this example, 4% would be 30,600 is what we need. Now that as a 4% would be 765K. So if you had 765K invested, 60% shares, 40% fixed income assets, then you can use the 4% rule, and you would be able to guarantee that money, obviously having faith in the market, but the numbers have been done. You would guarantee that money to come in. You can do monthly drawdowns, and which is just selling off that amount that you need each month, and then you'll be able to supplement that additional money required with your super, hit the 75K and ride into the sunset.
Love it, mate. That's absolutely achievable. Like if you've got a couple, you're thinking you got to get 380 grand each in your KiwiSaver or in your investment properties and be freehold, and you can live a pretty comfortable retirement.
Yeah. Now, that is definitely what I would recommend.
Well, clearly.
And what I would go for rather than the nest egg. Some people are drawn to the nest egg because it doesn't require relying on a market, which I totally understand. Inherently, there is a risk in everything. I was talking to producer Jackie yesterday about this episode, and she was saying, I heard you say the other day, super might not be around when we retire. And I'm like, well, that's true, because if you look at just the numbers, this aging population idea that's prolific in some more advanced countries like Japan, the working force is forecast to be so much smaller because of the declining birth rate, So when we get to retirement and people are going to be living way longer, there's going to be so many more retirees and so much less tax revenue in comparison to what we're earning today. So unless we get a massive influx of working people, which these days seems not too likely, just see there's a bit of pushback on immigration and actually just low net migration. Now, people aren't rushing here to work. We're going to have to either borrow money to pay for super, or we're going to have to change it, right? We're going to have to means test it, or we're going to have to increase the retirement age to 70 or something.
I mean, that would be horrible if we end up going down that road.
Yeah. It's not a... It's
a means testing. I'd rather open the borders up and just really try to make New Zealand attractive and get the workforce in.
100% agree.
We don't want to be borrowing money, and we don't want to be taking back. Taking those benefits from hardworking Kiwis that are in their twilight years.
You want your country to thrive, but at the same time, I want to know that my people are going to be looked after in retirement. I'm happy to pay taxes knowing that a lot of it goes to pensioners because they've built this country. They deserve a good retirement. Something's got to change, and hopefully it's stimulating the economy. There's risk either way. You could go all in on the 4% rule and push it even higher and say, hey, what if I don't even want to rely? What if I want to have such a comfortable retirement? I don't want to rely on this pension income. And then, you can put it even more. So you need an extra $1 million, right, to cover that 40 grand. And the great thing about this, which is sort of the really difficult part of retirement planning, is inflation. The 4% rule adjusts for inflation automatically. It's brilliant. So every year, the reason it's 4% and not 5% or 5.2% is because every year it adds 2.5% on top of what you can withdraw.
Right.
So if that makes sense. So the 30,600 would increase by 2.5%. The following year, it's automatically adjusted for inflation and still stays within that safe withdrawal rate range.
Brilliant.
4%, you bear risk, but in my opinion, the numbers around the 4%, it's an incredible piece of financial science. So you'll start your 4% journey, and the first couple of years, your portfolio balance drops a lot because the market just tanks. And so still taking out 4% obviously feels a bit scary because it's like, holy crap, like I'm just going to run out of money. But then naturally after 6 or 7 years, the market recovers and you'll end back up at your principal amount.
And if you're more risk averse, you could have that little bit of extra in savings and then still live by the 4% rule, but you've built in a buffer. Like, for example, if you had $1 million, you could draw down 3%. It's another way of dampening some of the risk, right?
Exactly, yeah. That's a way to guarantee you're going to go the distance. In weaker years, you use some common sense, and in bear markets, you're taking 3, and then maybe in bull markets, you're taking 5.
But I'd certainly like to have choices in my retirement.
Yeah.
If possible. Depends on what my financial advisor, Daniel Lipman, thinks can be done.
How do you actually get there, right? So we've identified for this individual, we're going for $75K a year. We're going for comfortable. Number 1, pick the lifestyle. We'll pick comfortable. Number 2, subtract the expected super, right? So we just used today super 44,000. So now the gap to bridge we understand is the 30,000. We want to adjust for inflation. So we're not going to adjust super for inflation. We're going to assume that gets adjusted itself. So heaps of ways to adjust for inflation. You can just literally plug it into Google AI. What's this money worth in 25 years or whenever you plan to retire? And it will tell you exactly. And then work backwards using the 4%. So for the example we looked at today, it's 765,000. Work backwards. How am I going to get there? So work out an investment contribution. Like even if you say, okay, we can just hammer this with our KiwiSavers. We're in our 40s. We can get there with our KiwiSavers. Figure out if the income you earn is actually going to get you there. Maybe you have to increase your contributions to 6%, 8%. You can gamify it that way. Maybe that's not going to get you there. Maybe you want to do a bit extra with your investment portfolio. You and your partner want to start up a fund, $1,000 a month. That's probably going to help. Or use your equity, buy an investment property.
There you go.
That's my opinion. That's what I'm doing. Yeah. I'm doing a blend. I think that the power of compound interest with your investments can't be ignored. So I'm definitely not just all in on real estate, but I think using real estate is really important because, like I said before, inflation erodes debt. If you can find really good properties with good rental income to service the debt, that's going to help you a lot. And then the big thing is, do I want to be mortgage free? This is the last question. Do I want to be mortgage free or debt free? And then figuring out how you're going to get there. If your retirement's 20 years away and you're on a 25-year loan term, we've either got to increase our repayments or find other ways to pay it off faster. Can I incorporate a revolving credit facility to somehow offset my interest and pay more principal? Am I going to sell the house when I retire and downsize to 2 bedrooms? All these things that you can do, which is going to get you there.
Inflation adjustment, because we didn't touch on that earlier, is that the numbers that we've been given are today, but if you're planning on retiring in 30 years, the numbers are much larger. The numbers are a lot bigger. So when we go, you need 765,000 to retire comfortably.
You need that today.
Everything's going to be costing up the wazoo in 20 years' time.
Look, it's a scary number, but it's more than doable with a plan.
That's why you need a plan, because it is a big number.
100%. Even if you guys worked until your guys' KiwiSavers is going to do a lot of this heavy lifting. You know what I mean? The compounding effect. If you're an active growth fund, you're getting a double up every 7 years, based on prior returns. So that's pretty much it. I mean, we've got some tools in our toolkit. We do a lot of free tools that we give away all the time. You can download some spreadsheets, or you can just give one of us a call or send us an email. If you really want to get serious about this and you want to do it through property investment, definitely get in touch, because we've got some really good case studies and really good ideas on how you can get there.